4, 3, 2, 1. Hey there, spiritual dope. We are on today with my friend Deb Razar. And Deb, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but you're one of the main reasons actually that I am doing this podcast. You were a kind of a catalyst for help me get the leap into spiritual dope. I'm just going to let you know that just by doing kind of what you did. So Deb is a friend of Meg's from way back in the day, like childhood days. She's an evidential medium and intuitive. She she helps people kind of like connect with their loved ones who have passed. And I'm just kind of reading your bio off right now. And your calling is to serve the spirit world while bringing hopeful, helpful, and healing messages to me, you, your loved ones in the physical world. But you're a medium, right? And like it took you a while to just kind of accept your gifts, right? And when you had shared this coming out letter, Meg and I were first like coming out letter. What's this going to be about?
Well, she told me what she thought it was about. Right. It's not that. Right. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's not that.
100%. And so this coming out letter was like, I'm a medium coming out letter, and I thought that was kind of an entertaining thing. And then you had given me a reading that connected me with my grandfather, and the catalyst, just so to let you know, was like, I was like, well, you're kind of like stepping out and doing this thing, and I was like, what the hell am I holding myself back for, right? I was like, the time is now. And, just kind of stepping into it. So, I'm going to start this off with a thank you, for helping be the catalyst, inspiration, and a part of the journey. So thank you.
You're quite welcome. Happy I could be a part of that.
And then I always start these off with something. This should be an easy one for you. I always start these off with, source, as you know, divine energy speaks through us, right? And we are here today to speak to somebody who's listening in on this podcast, right? And there's a message that can only be delivered right now through you to that person. What is that message today, Deb?
The first thing that comes to me is to really trust in yourself. If you don't first and foremost trust in yourself, especially in the field that, I hate saying the field that I'm in, but with what I do, it's impossible for me to trust in what I'm, hearing subjectively from the spirit world. And the most important thing when I say to trust yourself, it's to really, they say there's intuition, gut instinct, but it's really to trust your soul, to trust what your soul is telling you. Because that's where all of the answers are. It's not going to come from anything external. It's not going to come from anybody else. You can ask for 50 opinions from 50 friends and family members. And really, ultimately, what matters is that you trust what your soul is telling you. That's probably my biggest message.
So where do you feel like you first finally learned to trust that for yourself?
Well, it was definitely not an overnight thing, as I'm sure you know, because I know that you've done a lot of, I call it self-development work. And I think we're all works in progress, and I'm not done. I'll never be done. I mean, until the day I physically leave this earth. But this was a long journey for me. Really, I say on my website, sort of back to myself. Because the way I'm living now is very true to me and very authentically, but it wasn't always like that. So I think it was a process of really coming, I don't know if I would say coming to terms with, but understanding that there's a real duality to me, to each of us. And there are a lot of things that we don't particularly care about ourselves. We traits that, I wish I wasn't so stubborn, or I wish I wasn't so messy in my case. And there were these qualities that I have that I would really shame myself for, a variety of things. The podcast isn't long enough for me to tell you what I used to shame myself for. And then the other part of that duality are the things that I'm proud of, the parts of my personality that I really feel good about, the things that I'm not afraid for others to see. I feel like a lot of us walk around and we show one side of us. We show the side that we think is safe because we all just want to be seen. But yet, if you think about it, we're not truly being seen if we don't really show who we are at the soul level. So I can show you something and make myself look good. And look at my kids, they're all perfectly dressed and my house is so neat, which it's not. This is just an example, but that may be what I'm presenting, but that may not be what is authentically me. And that was my journey, if you will, that I needed to reconcile the fact that there were all these things that I really wasn't happy with myself. And instead of complaining about it and or shaming myself about it, I realized I was the problem, but I was also the solution. And so in order to do something about it, I had to take that journey inward, which no one likes to do because it is quite honestly the most uncomfortable journey ever. And that's the journey back into ourselves. And it sounds super cheesy, but it's really the truth. I had to come back to myself and sort of, it's almost like if you picture like a big toy box, you open a toy box and you kind of take everything out and you want to see what's in there. I had to kind of assess and look at everything and say, okay, these are the things that really aren't working for me, or these are the things that, they're just sort of inherently a part of my nature. And I'm not in love with them, and I don't love other people seeing them. But it was a matter of really accepting those things about myself, forgiving myself for the things that I wasn't super jazzed about, but also realizing that all of those things that were more, I call them the shadow side, they were also there to teach me a lot of great lessons. And without them, I wouldn't really be able to focus on the light, those qualities that were really helping me be my best self. They have to coexist. They can't be mutually exclusive, because that is what makes up, this is my perspective only, but that's what makes up the soul. Both of those, the balance, that duality. And so that was my...
Yeah, I'm with you, right? So I've got that jotted down for 1 second. You know what? I think that I don't do the best job of this part, right? let's do it real quick from your mouth, right? Like you're doing a medium. You are a medium now. A little bit more about kind of what you're doing in this space, right? Just so people kind of get an idea of your spiritual journey and spot right now.
Well, thank you for asking that, because I think a lot of people, and as you said, I'm a medium, I'm able to connect with people that have passed. Is that the only thing I do? Not remotely. In fact, it's a very tiny part of what my mediumship is. Now, if you have 10 different mediums on your podcast, we are not all going to work the same way. Now, what we all will work with is energy. Every medium will tell you that. However, there are mediums that will be very, very factual. They'll be able to sit and I'll be able to tell you things about your grandfather. They'll name 30 facts. He was an atheist and he, worked in a shipyard and all these things. And that is to prove that life exists once there is the death of the physical body. So am I able to provide evidence that our loved ones still exist past the death of the physical body? Yes, I am. But what my sessions are really about, I had one client tell me it was almost like I held a mirror to her soul. I was like, wow, that's really deep. I almost call it like a very gentle soul excavation, if you will. Because what I'm doing is I work intuitively, as much, if not more so, than I'm working with spirit loved ones. And this has probably changed a lot. And I can't remember our reading, to be quite honest, but I feel like there may have been a mix, but now it's even more so. When I'm reading a client intuitively, I'm telling them about their personality and things about their life. Well, yeah, you could say, well, why would someone want to pay to be told things they already know about themselves? But that's just how we start. Then we go deeper. And I like to say, I am not a fortune teller. I do not predict anyone's future. That's not what any medium really should be doing ethically and morally. We don't know what holds for people's future, because there is free will. You have the choice to make about your own life. But what I am able to do is to go deeper beneath your subconscious and sort of, when I say excavate, gently pull out things that you are aware of on some level, but on a deeper soul level, when I'm showing them to you, when I'm holding up that mirror, it's taken in a much different way. I feel like a session with me can help bring someone back to themselves. I'm not doing any healing. I'm not healing people. I'm not, waving some kind of crystal wand. That's not my job. That's not what I do. But with the spirit world facilitating, with loved ones in spirit chiming in. Now, I talk about the loved ones' personalities and the relationship between them and my client. And the healing that can take place when dad in spirit is talking about his personality and maybe challenges that he had when he was alive in the physical world. And dad's son is facing something similar. It's almost like this light bulb goes off, that the messages that the loved ones in spirit are bringing to my client are those in that moment that are meant for my client's greatest good and soul's highest purpose. And there's a lot of growth and a lot of shift that can happen. It's also why I have on my website, I will not see clients unless there's been 6 months in between each reading. Because look, just like when you go to therapy, you're not going to change overnight. I am not a therapist. I'm not certified in any of that kind of thing. But even with a session with a medium like myself, what I'm presenting you is going to sit with you for a bit. And it's going to cause you to sort of, there's a lot of self-reflection that happens afterwards. There is a lot of healing that can take place. But the healing is on the part of my client. I can't do that work for someone. And maybe the client says, all right, well, that was okay. I'll just take that for what it's worth. And I may never hear from them again. I tend to have a lot of repeat clients after 6 months. I always say 6 months to a year. And I can think of 3 women I've had over the past week and a half. When they came on the screen, on the Zoom screen, I could feel their energy had changed so much. It's the best feeling for what I do because I get so excited for them. Just the wholeness that I felt from them, the shift, what they were emanating, I could feel that. And that's the power of the work that I have been called to do and that I feel so grateful to do, because the change that really can occur, it's almost like I was given this blessing of having this torch, and we all have torches, right? But some of us, our light's gone dim a little bit. Some of us, the light's gone out. If I can just assist and help someone light their torch, it's their job to keep that torch going. It's not going to be my job. But the fact that I can help light someone back up again, there's nothing greater to be able to offer to people. So that's kind of, in a long way, that's kind of what I do. It's spirit communication, it's intuitive work. It's all combined to help my client get to a deeper part of themselves, really.
No, that's awesome, right? It's kind of interesting, right? You started it off with, how every medium's a little bit different, and the image that came to my mind is, just simply different lenses, right?
Yeah.
Simply different lenses, different perspectives, different. I'm thinking of like crystals and prisms, even like
Yep.
different ways of refracting that energy, right? So
Yep.
different ways of kind of refracting that. I love too that a mirror to the soul, and I think that's. I don't. The term light worker is not my jam, but I guess it's as close as I can get, right?
I don't use the term either, but I
mean, when you're just kind of in circles and everybody's doing something similar, you are showing someone the light within them, right, themselves, and helping to extract that. And
because everybody has it. And believe me, I know from experience there are times when it is so hard to find that within yourself. The reason this all came smack dab in my face, there were always, this is who I've been since I've been a little kid. But the reason that this came out as it did was because of the difficulties that I had in the work I was doing with myself. There was serious anxiety and stresses, and that brought me to where I am currently.
Well, I think what's interesting too, right? A big part of what you're talking about is, you shoved your light down for so long, right?
I did, yeah.
You shoved your own light down for so long, and then you talk about doing this shadow work. And what's funny is the more I think about the Disney Peter Pan, the more I realize that, like, how he lost his shadow and he had to sew it back on. Like, I'm like, oh, wow, that was pretty potent stuff.
Yes, it was, huh?
All right. But the idea of going back in and accepting all of who you are allows you to bring that authentic self that you're talking about, come out and share exactly who you are with everybody else, and just kind of like it's a more powerful but gentler way of being, I would say.
Agreed.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I also love the idea of, like, so one session with you is basically a 6 month to a year value, right? It's kind of I hate to spend value into that, but that's kind of what it is. And then you bring in, help. And that's how we opened it up, right? Like you helped me kind of bring me back to myself through the connection with my kind of grandfather and by showing that like, you can just step into who you are and just go, hell with it. I mean, what's going to happen?
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah.
And so lots of stuff packed in there. And then you talk about like the shift in energy, but I'd like to hear kind of again where before you were doing medium, and I actually don't know. So before you were doing medium work, what kind of work were you doing? Like what was kind of paint the picture before stepping into that, and then illustrate maybe your shift in acceptance of who you are.
Okay. So before all this, I mean, and I still am, I'm a mom, and I used to say I'm just a mom, and now I've scribbled that word just out with black Sharpie, because that, as you know, from parenting, there's never, it's not just a mom or just a dad even. I mean, it's parenting is, and I parent with my full self, and I try to be as present as I can with my kids. My background, and where Meg and I went to college, my background is in advertising and public relations. I was always into creative writing. I really thought it'd be cool to be the next Amanda Woodward, because, we were all into Melrose Place back then. Not that that'll date me. But that was not a really practical thing, because you had to, move to New York or LA, which I wasn't prepared to do at the time. So I fled my East Coast roots and came out to Arizona, and I ended up working in radio for about 4.5 years. And I was on the sales side of things. So I was in advertising technically, but I was on the sales side of things. And my managers, this is funny, I had 2 nicknames. I was called this is great, at 23, everyone would love to be called this, Old Mother Hubbard. And I was called everyone's conscience. So I didn't know whether or not to take that as an insult or a compliment. It's just kind of funny now looking back on what I do. There was a lot of seedy stuff happening in radio, a lot of older men cheating, and it was icky. And so here I was, the young one in the group. I was one of the youngest, and they thought of me as their conscience, which I laugh now. It sort of makes sense a bit. Not that I was an angel by any means, but it's just kind of funny thinking about that. And then, I wasn't happy with what I did. In fact, I was the George Costanza of my office. My sister used to crack up because I'd act all stressed and I have these deadlines, but I was really going into the copy room, because there was a copy room then, and I was photocopying off of the internet recipes from Epicurious and food.com. I kid you not, when I was done in radio, I hope my old bosses aren't listening to this. I probably had a binder this thick. I've always been a cook and a baker, and baking has always been a passion. So I left radio and I went to baking and pastry school for a year. I worked for a wholesale bakery. Then I started working for Jenny Craig, which everyone cracks up like, okay, first I'm making the baked goods and I'm helping people lose the weight. The takeaway from this is that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had friends, childhood friends, people Meg knows, they were all successful. They worked for Wall Street, and they were pharmaceutical sales reps and occupational therapists, and they had these big jobs and they made these big salaries. And I was going from job to job to job. And I remember saying to my parents, I just don't want to work at a desk in an office. My dad's like, what does that mean? You want to be a plumber? And I'm like, no, I want to help people. And I just want to do something that feels good. And, I was just like living on another planet. I had no attention span for anything. Every job I was bored instantly. Pastry school I loved, but I didn't love baking for somebody else. And right at the end of my reign at Jenny Craig, I was a program director. I did sales. I loved the emotional part of that. I dealt with, I was overweight on and off throughout my life. So to work with people like that one-on-one, it felt like I was giving back in some way. And then at the end of that, I quit a week before I had my daughter, and I haven't been back in the quote unquote workforce, the real workforce. I started working for myself. So what I realized was I was floating around because nothing stuck with me. And, look, a lot of people do that. Doesn't mean that everybody's a medium because you can't find what you want. But I just knew that I wasn't the kind of person that cared a lot about making money. And I wish I had been, because maybe I would have, found some big career and stuck with it. But I just want to do something that, where I feel good about what I do, where I feel like it's really, I'm making a difference. And, it's so cheesy to say that because so many people say, and I was young when I said it, but I would get into something, and in radio, for example, they gave me the difficult clients, the ones that were going through divorce, the ones that someone had died. I made the least amount of money. I was the least paying sales rep, and some of these sales reps made well into the six figures. I was making nothing, but I'd be on the phone for hours with my clients and they're breaking up with the boyfriend. They're going to talk to Deb and we'll get another deal out of it because they trusted me. My strength, I suck at sales. I hate asking people for money. It's so uncomfortable for me. But what I don't suck in is relating to people. I've always, always, always related with people. My first job when I moved to Arizona, 3 weeks, I worked for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. Sorry, Enterprise Rent-A-Car, crappiest job I've ever had. We'll pick you up. That was the phrase. And here I am. It's 115 in Arizona. Forget about the dry heat. It's freaking hot. And I had to wear a suit with pantyhose, no less. It was so awful. I was sweating. But the people I picked up by the end, they became my friends to the point where after 3 weeks, the last lady I picked up, she said, you have this dynamic personality. What are you doing driving for Enterprise? She said, we need someone in our events marketing. Here's my card. Call me. I'm going to get you an interview. And I thought, well, she's not going to remember. She did. And a week later, I was working for her company as an event planner. So I just kept jumping job to job to job. The only thing consistent was that I loved relating to people. I've always loved it. So it makes sense. My mediumship makes sense because not only am I relating to my clients, but I'm also relating to their loved ones in spirit who are still people, just people not in the physical sense. So they have stories to tell.
Yeah, not non-corporeal presence, right?
Yeah.
So right. I love the, kind of hopping around. Nothing kind of fits. I love the idea of and I love cooking too. And here's how I relate to kind of being in the kitchen. You're connected to like a creative source, and that's like, for sure, you are in the creation process during that. So you have to be all in when you're cooking, because otherwise it falls apart.
Correct. Yes, it does, and quickly.
Right. So you have to pay attention. That's one of the things I haven't cooked in a while, and I kind of missed that because of that. So, when is the point where you accept the shift into your mediumship, your gift, and say, you know what, now is the time to make a go of this thing?
It was kind of like I think a lot of people have to get to what, they call it the dark night of the soul. It's so dramatic, but I never knew what that meant until I really felt like I was there. And I say that obviously with the caveat that that's different for everyone. I mean, there are people that have really lived through severe tragedy. I have not lived through any kind of tragedy like that. But for my own world, what I was dealing with, my anxiety, which I've had since I was a little kid, which what's fascinating is in all of these mediumship courses and workshops and groups that I've been in and am still a part of, I don't know that I've met one medium that has not had anxiety or does not have, chronic anxiety, whether it's social anxiety, whether it's because when you're feeling all of the emotions and of other people, and what I didn't know how to deal with energy at that time. I didn't know that I didn't need to take on everyone's energy that was around me in a room, and that why was I feeling so sad? Why am I depressed? I didn't realize that I was picking that up from, someone in my college class that I was sitting next to all the time. I didn't have knowledge of that then. But what happened was it really all came to a head for me when my grandmother, who was one of my dearest friends, she died at 102. And I felt her. Well, I mean, there were a lot of things that happened building up to it, but my anxiety had taken on legs right around the time when she died. And after she died, it was to the point where it didn't just feel like regular anxiety anymore. So I've been in and out of therapy for years, just, because it's been very helpful. I've had a sister that's been ill, so I was always in therapy for one thing or another. And my therapist, who I really love and trust, my anxiety was just at an all-time high. I remember her telling me, she's like, Deb, I was like, a mile a minute. And she's like, just take a pause and breathe. And she made me take a couple breaths just to kind of slow down. And she's, while I'm breathing, she's running around behind me at her filing cabinet. And she pulls out this like pamphlet of paper stapled in the corner. And she hands it to me and she starts talking. And I'm not really listening to her because I can never do two things at once. And this kind of explained why. And I'm going through and I didn't even read the top. There were all these questions, and it asked you to rate yourself on a 0, meaning on the low end, to a 10. And everything was an 8 or a 9. There were a couple of 10s in there.
Yeah, what were some of the questions?
I can't remember. Having a heart, having a hard time finishing a project, or getting sidetracked very easily. Like if when someone's talking to you, not being able to focus, or becoming too focused, spending too much time on one thing. And I'm like, wow, I'm like, why are you giving me, we know I have anxiety. And then she said, that's not an assessment for anxiety. It's an assessment for ADHD. And I was like, what are you talking about, Willis? ADHD? I mean, I'm like, that's something that kids have, well, come to find out that one of the most misdiagnosed group of people with ADHD are women in their mid-40s. Because what happens is forgetfulness. That was another thing, like memory. That can be hormones, perimenopausal, which I am not. Sorry for the TMI, but it can be hormones. It can be all these things. And interestingly enough, anxiety is what's the word I want? Is a culprit, if you will, of ADHD. So it's almost like what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The anxiety happens because of the attention deficit hyperfocus disorder. So in children, that H is hyperactive. In adults, for me, it's hyperfocus. So I was going to bed at 4:00 in the morning. Okay. I'm on my laptop because I'd seen a woman, this is a true story, with a cute pair of shoes. And I said, where'd you find them? I don't know. I got them 6 years ago. Oh, damned if I wasn't going to find that pair of shoes. I can tell you, I'm online. I'm going to find those shoes. Meanwhile, I've got the Real Housewives of some city on TV. I'm eating chocolate, constantly eating chocolate, because I had a problem with sugar. I could not get enough sugar. Well, then it was explained, of course, you couldn't get enough sugar because what your brain is missing is that serotonin release, and that's what sugar gives you. My other love, in addition to baking and eating chocolate, is exercise and fitness. I've been into weightlifting since I was 17 and intense workouts. I was into CrossFit, all that. Well, that's another thing that's going to produce the serotonin and the dopamine release in my brain. So all of a sudden, everything sort of started to make sense. Now, I don't like to use this as, oh, well, I have ADHD, so my house is a mess. I mean, my house is a mess, and maybe it's partly my ADHD. Maybe it's just because I didn't feel like cleaning it. But what I want people to know, and I was in a documentary on Amazon Prime with one of my mentors, an amazing medium, Suzanne Wilson. She's known as the Carefree Medium.
What's the name of the documentary?
The series, it's called Life to Afterlife, by Craig McMahon is the producer. And there's several in that series. And the one I'm in, I hate the title though. Sorry, Craig. It's really cringy. It's I Want to Speak to the Dead. It's a little sensationalized and it's not like that. The documentary is not like that. I did not set out because I wanted to try to speak to the dead. I couldn't help it. Right. So I'm just tossing that out there. But
real quick, one of the things that I find interesting, right, is this relationship to the anxiety and the energy field and the mediums. And it's interesting how you kind of tell it is, you weren't aware of a way to kind of grab hold of the energy, protect yourself, and or redirect the energy that was coming through you, right?
Right.
And I hate to do, but I always liken it to like these like old kung fu master flicks, right? Or even like the teacher will appear when the student is ready.
Yes, I love that.
But it so happens, right? So it so happens then, my guess is at some point, you run into a teacher, you have some conversations, and you're like, oh, how do you know so much about what I'm going through?
Yep.
Tell me
exactly.
More. Yeah, tell me about that.
So what I was going to tell you about the documentary, the reason I brought it up is because when Suzanne approached me to participate in it, I said to myself, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to make sure that everything I say is my truth and that I'm completely authentic. Craig did a great job with the editing because my hands, I'm all over the place. That I'm a Philly girl. That's how we talk with our hands. But I did speak about my ADHD on there, and I had some people that's, oh, you don't want to divulge that, and people are going to judge you. Number one, I'm not concerned about being judged anymore at all, and that is a true statement.
And that's liberating, right? Like, I mean, how liberating is that? So liberating.
It's amazing. But more importantly, I needed to speak my truth, because if one person heard me and felt like, this again, everything I say I feel like is so cliche, but if I can help one person, but it's true. And I've actually had so many people reach out to me randomly on Facebook Messenger saying, I really connected to you because I also, I thought that I was just really unmotivated or really lazy, and it doesn't mean that every person that reached out to me feels like they're a medium. This is only a part of my own personal journey. But it upsets me that there is a stigma, and for children as well. This is something that never popped up in my childhood. Maybe it was there in subtle ways. I mean, I was a good student, but I had to be in a room with no noise. Like, I had friends that could study with music on and talking. I needed to have total quiet. Otherwise, my mind was listening and taking in everything around me. But I also need to express that I don't define myself like, oh, I'm an adult with ADHD. It's one little bit of me. And I actually have a mentor that thinks that I really may not have it, that it might be just sort of all the other things in my life that were big stressors. And maybe that's true too.
So here's the thing, I'll if you don't mind, I'll share my take on it, right? Like, I mean, we were raised to be distracted. I mean, look at all the different courses, that we had to take, right? Look at, the television programming, 20-minute blocks, or 10 to 15-minute blocks. And then, 6 minutes of 30-second commercials. We were trained to be fucking confused and deranged. I mean, correct. Right. Yeah. So here's the result. And so my reason for saying that, you don't have an attention, or like you're hyperactive or whatever deficit, because it worked. The training worked. Exactly. Right? Which brings us back to, reconnecting with yourself, which is what you've done.
And you literally just touched on something, because as you were saying that, it like this light bulb went off, and it was going to bring me back around to the point where you use the word distracting. Like, there have always been so many distractions. And for me, what my distractions were, whether they were connected to ADHD or not, I needed, at that heightened point of anxiety, my distractions were, I've never been a drinker. It's chocolate, like food, specifically sweets. And I would binge on chocolate. And then I would go into a shame spiral about it. But what the chocolate was doing, I was numbing. Everything I did, the online shopping, the watching too much reality TV, having it all at once, it was a way to quiet the noise. Now, remember, I'm a medium. So there was all this noise, this energy coming from everywhere. Think about it. How was I gonna silence it? I didn't know what I was dealing with. So I used every external source. It's a good thing I don't like alcohol, and I've never been into drugs, because I probably would be, in AA right now. Oh, and I'm not making fun of that, but I'm being serious.
No, it'd definitely be just another thing to pile on top of it, right? Did you ever try a foil helmet?
What's that? Are you being kidding? Or is this
semi-facetious, right? Like, but I mean, if you did you ever try to put on like a foil helmet to stop like all the noises, right?
No. And
honestly, like, I mean, if I'm having all these things happen, I'm just thinking, like, I could see myself actually doing that at some point, especially like if all these noises are always coming through and I don't have a teacher, I don't have a guide. We didn't get that in 5th grade. We got phys ed and some other things, but we didn't train in, mediumship.
Talking to the deceased.
Right. It wasn't an option.
Right.
So I would literally probably see myself trying it, right? How do I quiet it?
Well, here's the thing, is that when I say all the noise and the distraction, at this particular time, I wasn't hearing from spirit people. It was the energy, it was the emotion. I was like a sponge, and it's a lot to be a sponge for everybody else. And I've been this way since I was a little kid. If someone in my family was having a bad day, I was feeling the bad day, which is probably why I ended up in therapy each time my sister had cancer. She never complained. She was a warrior, but I wanted to take all of that on. And I think in a way, energetically, I did. And then so I was, super, super low. And look, there's always going to be stuff. There's always going to be stuff happening around. When I really started hearing from the spirit world, when I say that, now there are mediums that hear objectively, meaning, I hear voices in my head. I don't hear voices in my head, just to clarify. And I'm not saying this to joke, because they're mediums that objectively hear, like your grandfather in the spirit world. They might say, like, I see your grandfather behind your right shoulder. That is not how it's come for me. Now, the beauty of mediumship is that it's a self-development journey. It's always changing, always. So may I eventually at some point see someone's loved one sitting next to them? I may. But as of right now, the way I say it is it's like a picture in my mind's eye. If I asked you right now to remember your favorite scene from your favorite movie and like play it in your mind like it's a real, you could see, right? You could see the people, what they're doing. You could even hear your favorite line, even though you're not hearing it being played in your ear. So when I explain that I see and I hear, that is subjectively, okay? That's really important. So it wasn't that I was being bombarded by like, hey, can you get a hold of my nephew? And hey, can you get a hold of my daughter over there? Because that would really drive someone crazy, probably. And there is a huge stigma that we're all nuts, right? All mediums, like, I should have come on with the headscarf and there's patchouli everywhere around me. And I just burned my sage. I actually did burn a little sage. I do like sage. And there's nothing wrong with patchouli and headscarves and all those things. But the point is, and yes, I'm holding a crystal because holding a crystal grounds me. Like I tend to be like very up here. And so it grounds me whenever I need to discuss, or when I'm in a reading, I typically will hold some form of stone. But there is no one size fits all for mediums. I mean, a lot of people think of mediums, they think of the Long Island medium, Teresa Caputo. She's a character with the long nails and she's got like a shtick, I call it. She's got the blonde hair. But the sad thing is that probably detracts from the fact that she really does, hear from people's loved ones. But there's not a one size fits all. We don't all look a certain way. If you saw me on the street, you'd just be like, oh, there's some, middle-aged woman with 2 kids and, living her life. It's not like, I walk around like with this and I have, scarves all around me. I just think there are lots of stigmas. My ADD was a stigma. I feel like I had to sort of rebel against all the stigmas, if you will, especially now.
Well, I mean, again, you had to go in, see who you were for yourself, and make the decision to accept yourself as you are for who you are and roll with it, right? Kind of step into that and share yourself with others, which is kind of what you're doing with the Soul Wisdom, right, on your website. It's what you're doing with offering readings, and so a big part of this podcast is talk about, I guess, kind of merging all of who you are, your spiritual self, with the material world, right? Or bringing that out. Like, I mean, it's a great one of the other things that you hit on too was like, we've got these 2 separate selves, and I always think of like the Matrix, right? There's Mr. Neo. One life you're blah blah blah, this one guy, and his other life you're this other person, and it's so true, right? Yeah. So how do you feel like you have merged the 2, and what's your life been like because of that?
So when you say how have I merged my mediumship with now that it's technically a business?
Well, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, right, but that's also that's another stigma, right? Like that's just something that like you don't want to, because you're like, this is I'm helping people into a category, right? Like, you don't want to be like, but it is, right? It's just. And it's again, we just want to be ourselves, right? Without having having to classify or label it. But like, exactly, those labels unfortunately help like other fucking people, whatever. That's true. Right? It's hard to for them. It's hard to put yourself on the map if you don't share the map.
It's true. It's true. Right? And I think what had to happen for me was that once I really decided, and it was a choice, that I was going to really live my authentic truth. And in every facet of my life, I have a mentor that says mediumship is not spirit communication or just intuitive. Mediumship is our life. I mean, being a medium is being alive, and being alive means being, if I really want to do my soul's work as a natural medium, I have to work my mediumship the way I work my life. And what I've decided to do, again, this is just, I'm one person. You could ask 10 different mediums, they'd say different things. I have to show up every day as myself. Again, I said flaws and all that whole duality, because what I'm able to do then is hopefully, especially in a session with me, allow other people to see that it's okay to show up as yourself. You don't have to be X, Y, or Z to be enough. And again, everything I say is written in every book, everywhere. we are enough as we are. And I used to hear them go, oh yeah, I'm enough as I am, whatever. But if I were only skinnier and if I only had more, this, and that, and the other thing.
Sure. No, you're right. It is all in these books, and it is in a number of these things, but it's a different level of understanding, right? There's the literal understanding, and there's the outward facing physical application of this shit. Right? You're like, oh, I'm enough. Yay, I showed up for work and I sharpened 72 pencils, whatever. Right? I'm enough. Yay. But like, the I am enough is like, that's the inner work that you're talking about.
It's the most important work.
Right? It's the, the lead and the most neglected, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then different levels of understanding, right? Because look, not for nothing, 4 years ago, if you'd said that this is what I'd be doing or any of this stuff, I would have laughed at you.
Right? Me too. With me. Yeah. I get that. Mm-hmm.
So,
and go ahead.
No, that it sounds cliche, right? Only because it's real. And unless you've experienced it subjectively, because you cannot, unfortunately, have somebody else's experiences for them, like you were talking about earlier. You can't do the work for somebody else.
No, you can't.
And you can't show up inside of someone else for them.
No, you can't. No. But what I think did it for me, when I first, like when I could not turn off the gifts, when I was getting all this information about people that had passed, for people that I even like sort of knew but didn't really know. I mean, it's funny, and Meg knows this. I've gotten in touch with some people that I've known since childhood, that we've known since childhood, because their loved ones came to me. And I was pretty proud of myself for having the cojones to reach out and say, look, I know I haven't seen you in 28, 30 years, but hey, I'm able to communicate with the dead, and I've got your wife or your dad or whomever with me. That, for me, took not staying small anymore, because, oh no, what are they going to think? They're going to think I'm weird. I didn't care. I didn't care what they thought, because if I knew that their loved ones had an important message for them to receive. Now, this is before I really sort of had honed what I'm doing, because there is ethics and morals, although we don't take the Hippocratic Oath. We're not therapists, we're not doctors, but it is so critical to have ethics and morals in what I do, because people are trusting me. I mean, when you have a session with me, it's almost like, I say, like, you can try to bullshit your therapist. I've tried that once or twice. We want to sort of show our therapist like the good side, which you can't get any help that way, but still, it's been done. People kind of try to BS the therapist. When you're coming with me, it's almost like it's like having seen your therapist for 7 years, because all of a sudden our relationship is like, boom, because you're not going to be able to show me something that isn't true, because I am an intuitive, so I'm going to know that it's not true. Now, my job is also to tread lightly. If I know that someone can't take the information that I'm about to give them, or they're not ready to hear it. Hi, buddy. How are you? It's so good to see you. I got to chat with him after. My job as the medium is to be able to gauge whether or not my client is really ready for this gentle soul excavation. I will never force on someone, shove that mirror up to your face. That's the job of the medium. And there can be ego involved, and there is zero place. I had a mentor say the first 2 letters in medium don't belong there, because this is not about me. This is not like look at the pony trick I can do. I'm not doing anything. I am being my authentic self, the channel, if you will. I'm a conduit, is a better word for it. And my job is to be open, to not impose any judgment, to not impose any meaning, and to listen to what the loved ones in spirit have to say, to make sure that my client receives what they need. When I first started my development, I was so excited about my own experience. This is so cool. Oh my God, that guy just told me where his ashes were, and the wife just said, no one knows that. And was I patting myself on the back? No, but I was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Oh my gosh, how is this happening? But guess what? The experience is not for me. It's not about me. I have nothing to do with this. Once I got over that initial excitement, it's why my mediumship changed. It's why my sessions are not merely spirit contact, communication, where I'm just giving a lot of evidence. Because what happened was when I really went in and did that soul work on myself, when I really learned to accept being in my truth, I could then accept the truth that the spirit people had for their loved ones. And I could help then my client discover, if they hadn't already, their own truth. That's the only way. It's that triad of energy. And that was when it almost came full circle. It wasn't just like, this is so awesome. I'm talking to people that aren't alive anymore, but yet I know all these things. That's not what this is about. This is so much deeper, and there can be so much healing and soul work done. A mediumship session, if your listeners take nothing away, it is not just spirit communication. It can be. And if you have a loved one that you're really hoping to hear from, the medium has no control over that. The spirit world knows what my client needs in that moment, as I said, for their soul's highest purpose and greatest good. They know it's only going to be hopeful, helpful, or healing. There's nothing else that it's not dark or fearful. There's no fear around what I do. I have the utmost respect for this calling, if you will.
So I mean, it's almost not almost. I mean, you are tuning into that connection as a medium for your clients to pull that in through the universe, and if you've got your ego involved with it, there's it's almost like you're tainting the water, or the source, right? And then as you do this mediumship, connecting the source, and translating it right into words for the person who's there, your client. Essentially, you're reconnecting them to source, right?
Except if you look at it this way, again, just my perspective, but we all have the connection to source because it's within us, right? So if they've lost that connection,
it's kind of like I don't know, a jump start, right, for your heart, right?
What do you call it? Jumper cables for a car, even. Yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah. Your battery's there. It's just like drained or like neglected, or
that's a great way of putting it. Yeah.
Right. And so that's awesome, right? And again, the experience I had with you was amazing. Always grateful for that.
I'm glad.
And I think I know I was on my way. I was just doing some things but I wasn't doing them in 100% authentic manner, and in a way that I was still masking myself, right? And what you did kind of allowed me to just obliterate the mask and say, "Fuck it, let's go for it." And
that's the greatest thing I could hear, by the way, from someone that I've worked with, because, and I've told you this before, because it's all the ripple. We all have that ability to give back. You are really doing so much good. You have that energy about you where you're so curious. You're just so open. You want people, you want an understanding, and you really get excited, and you want that understanding to be shared among other people. So the fact that I was able to kind of give you that little spark, look what you're doing now for so many other people. So that's what I love. We are really all connected. Again, right. I'm going to sound super cheesy, but if we can see each other as that, we're all extensions of one another, and not look at each other as like, oh, you have that, I want that. And it's not about that. I mean, we really can be supports for one another and be each other's cheerleader, no matter what we do, no matter what business, industry, calling. There's not one more special than the other. What gifts someone has, when someone comes to me, if their gift is they're an electrician and they're so good at, and they're helping, out here, let me tell you, in Arizona, your AC goes out, you're hosed in the summer, right? It's 117 degrees. Right. That's someone's gift. And so long as they're living authentically, they're living their truth, they're passionate about it. If I can help spark that in other people, then, as I used to say, like, I just want a job where I can help people, then I really feel like I'm getting to live my very fullest life in that sense. And that's really the greatest gift that I've ever been given. Through all the shit storms that I've, kind of had to get past to get to this point, every bit of it was worth it to be 100%. Right here.
Well, some people never get to that point, right? It's not about like how long it takes you to get there. It's, do you get there, right? Meg and I certainly have the conversations where I believe that more people get there than not. It's just,
I hope so.
There's not an understanding of where they are because of the Western, kind of mindset. And it's like, oh shit. I'm gonna need like a Percocet.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna need a whatever. Whatever's going on here's got to be shoved right
Well,
back down.
let's numb it. Let's do whatever we can. Let's find ways to numb it and to feeling the pain. No one, look, it doesn't feel good to feel pain, whether it's emotional pain or physical pain. We all, as human beings, want that. Whenever pain starts, what can I do to stop it?
Why wouldn't you? So, I mean, what I'm looking at though isn't pain. It's there's that reignition of source and energy and feeling it, kind of like you were feeling it all coming from everywhere, and not knowing what it is. But since you don't know what it is, being fearful of it and trying to block it all out, right? So, keeping yourself disconnected from source and blah, right? But simply just because of all the stigmas and all this other stuff. Anywho. That's not what you do. What you do is help people connect to that, which is already there. Show them kind of like their own inner hidden city of glory or whatever, right? And
God, I need you to write my website for me, Brandon. That'd be great. I might use that actually.
So you help people map it out, or at least show them that it is possible. And you're doing this on thesoulwisdom.com, and then tell us a little bit more. At least what's offered on thesoulwisdom.com, and is that the only place they can connect with you? Where should they go if they want to connect with you?
It's the Soul Wisdom, THE, soul, SOUL, wisdom.com, all one word. That is the best place. There's a way to email me directly from that. It has, my business number is on there as well. It's interesting, but as I've developed, I've whittled down. My website was pretty small to begin with, and I've whittled it down because I used to have a mediumship offering, a mediumship session, and an intuitive only session. So if someone was not interested in hearing from loved ones in spirit, they just had they've got life issues, they've got things on their path they really want to get into the meat of. I took that away because what I realized was if someone's coming to work with me, they have to have some sort of trust with me off the bat. As of lately, I mean, I don't market myself. It's all been referral. Thankfully, the documentary with Suzanne Wilson really was a big help. I was on your friend Mona Loring's podcast. That was a help. But other than that, there's not really a way that people hear about me. So typically they've heard from a friend or a loved one. So they come with sort of a sense of trust. If they're coming to me with that sense of trust, they have to trust me, but more so they have to trust the spirit world, because my hope is that my clients come, the best way to get the most depth out of a session is to come as open as possible. Because if you're open, then you are going to receive what it is that you need, which I can't know because I don't know my clients before I work with them. They're strangers to me. We leave usually as friends, but they always start out as someone I've never met. I don't like to know anything about the people I work with. If they're open, now I just say I offer a mediumship session. A mediumship session, which is what I was saying earlier, is not just talking to dead people. A mediumship session is talking to the dead, but it's also intuitive information. Is it more one and less of another? It may be. We never know because it's different every time.
Could I call it like a continuation of energy instead of the dead, right?
Yes.
It's really, it's not dead.
Yeah, there
it's
is no,
alive,
there is,
right?
we say there is no, yeah.
So you just energy continuation of my grandfather, right?
Yeah. Well, because dead
right?
does sound, it sounds very harsh. There are people that say, well, dead is meaning like the physical body has died, but I really call them spirit people because their spirit hasn't gone anywhere. The essence of who they are, that is still very much alive. So on my website, again, it's slim. That's my offering. I am, and I had changes too. I am certified in sound healing. And for a while I was offering sound healings, then COVID hit, and it's possible I've done sound healings over, Facebook Live, just work like private Facebook Live groups. But I find that I use a gong and I use a crystal singing bowl and I've got a rain stick and I've got a wave drum. What I find is my sound healing is really an extension of my mediumship. So that's a whole story for another podcast, but sound.
So that's basically a part of your offering, right? Part of your offering.
It's not on the website anymore. I took it off.
Well, let's say that you and I are talking and intuitively, you're like, you know what? You need some noise, bro.
Yes. Yeah. You need some noise. I got to get that gong out for you. Yes.
Need some noise. So real quick. So I'm just I'm going to wind it down here, Deb, and you and I can keep talking, right? So, everybody, go to thesoulwisdom.com, check out Deb, and see what she has to offer there.
Oh, my
Let her know.
Instagram. You want me to tell you that? Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, go
Instagram
for
is
it.
Soul Wisdom AZ. Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
That's amazing.
Thank you for that.
You know what? I was always saying it like Soul Wisdom Oz or something like that, but it's Soul Wisdom AZ.
Soul Wisdom AZ. Soul Wisdom was taken, so AZ. I'm in Arizona, so that's where
Fair
that
enough.
comes
Fair
from.
enough. Fair enough. That makes sense. No,
Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. So, connect with Deb. If this is something that you're more interested in, I'll have links also in the podcast notes. And Deb, I just want to say thanks for coming on and being a part of the podcast today.
I appreciate you having me on. It was fun.